Welcome, fellow explorers. My name is Christian Alexanderson, and this is Hemlocks to Hellbenders, a podcast highlighting Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors. Many of us find our love for the outdoors the same way, with a hike, a short jaunt into the woods that brings us in touch with nature. But soon, short hikes just won't do. There's too many people, too many screaming kids, too much car traffic. So the only logical next step is to take longer hikes. 2 miles turns into 5 miles, turns into 10 miles. The peaceful solitude of the woods, the rewarding views from the summit, and the sense of accomplishment after completing a trail all contribute to a growing desire to spend even more time immersed in nature. As that passion grows, the idea of longer backpacking trips become more appealing. The ability to stay in the wilderness overnight offers a deeper connection to the outdoors. Gone are the easy hikes. Now you're planning multi-day journeys that require you to learn additional skills. You learn how to read maps. You develop a sleeping system. You figure out how to poop outside. Soon you're watching ultralight gear videos on YouTube and drooling over maps of the Appalachian Trail. All of your clothes are hiking clothes and the full transformation to granola gang is complete. For some, the progression from day hiker to backpacker is a natural one. But for many, myself included, it can be intimidating. Going from hiking around a lake to hiking for several days is a difficult hurdle, mentally and physically. But where do I start? What gear do I need? What hike should I try? How can I go from a day hiker to a backpacker safely? Well, since I'm still a backpacking noob, I decided to talk to the person that was once in my hiking shoes. I'm excited to welcome Tory Mather to the podcast. Tory is the voice behind the My Trails Are Many blog and the Tory Talks Trails accounts on social media. Tory, thanks so much for joining the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really been looking forward to this.
What is it you love about hiking?
There are a lot of things that I love about hiking. I think the first and main thing is that it really helps me quiet my mind and think through problems. So I work full time. I'm also a part-time content creator. And so I feel like I'm constantly on a screen and just being bombarded by notifications and emails and Teams messages. And so to get out in the wilderness and put my phone on Do Not Disturb and just listen to nature really helps quiet my mind. It's my main form of exercise on the weekend. So I get out and stretch my legs and my body feels a lot better after it as well. So both mental and physical benefits. And then I also have a very high energy dog. So when I can take him hiking, it benefits both of us because he gets exercise and he destroys my house less. So it's great.
What originally got you into backpacking?
I did my first backpacking trip in fall of 2022. So not that long ago. I think by most standards, I would still be considered a bit of a backpacking newbie in terms of years. I originally did not think I would ever like backpacking and was kind of like, oh, I don't really want to sleep outside on the ground. I don't really want to not shower. I'm worried about going to the bathroom outside, but I actually saw a lot of people who looked like me doing it on Instagram. And I think that I had originally thought that backpacking was for, people who wanted to hike 25 miles a day and were really super intense into hiking. And I never felt that I fit any of those stereotypes. So when I saw people who looked like me, who were hiking, similar mileage to me of 6 miles, 3 miles, and were going backpacking, it seemed a lot more attainable. So in fall of 2022, my husband actually took me on my first backpacking trip, and I would say it was mostly a disaster. We packed way too many things. It was way too heavy. We did not sleep a wink, but for some reason I decided I liked it, and since then I've been out on a whole bunch of different backpacking trips.
How confident would you say you were when you first started backpacking?
I think I was overconfident in that I thought I knew what I was doing more than I would have. Like looking back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, I made a lot of very basic beginner mistakes, mostly around what I packed in terms of weight. I had no idea how miserable it was going to feel to carry a lot of pounds of weight. And I think I went into it overconfident because I had hiked like a 20-mile day hike earlier in the month and was like, oh, well, 6 miles with a backpack is nothing compared to 20 miles without one. And the 6 miles with a backpack was significantly harder. So I also research a lot before I do anything. And so having researched a ton, and I did feel very confident going into it. And then after the first trip was like, okay, I need to reevaluate what I know because you really can only learn by doing. So then each time now I go on a trip, I refine the process of, okay, here was my packing list. Here's everything I used. Here's everything I didn't use, but still would need to take, like a first aid kit. Here's everything I took and didn't use and can leave at home. So it part of what I like about it is like this constant process improvement towards getting to a to a lighter pack.
What amount of your overconfidence do you think was just your positivity? Like, oh yeah, I'm going to do great. Like it's just going to go great.
I think there was definitely that part of it. I think also going with my husband was helpful, or I think we were overconfident because he had backpacked a lot, but he had backpacked a lot like 10 years ago. And
Uh-huh.
so I think that definitely played into it. I would recommend for anyone who is new to backpacking, find someone who has maybe backpacked slightly more recently than a decade ago. But it's attainable for everyone, and nothing went too wrong, and we all learned from our mistakes. So it was great.
What kind of trails did you start hiking in the beginning?
When I first got into hiking, I was doing very local trails. So I was very nervous about, especially when I started solo hiking, I was very nervous about it because I feel like every, true crime podcast tells you, oh, if you go in the woods alone as a woman, you're going to get killed. And that's not true. I have hiked almost 300 miles solo this year, and I am still here to tell the tale. So I think I was very nervous. So I stuck with local trails, trails that friends had recommended, trails that I had done before so that I knew where I was going, what the terrain was like, and trails that I knew I had cell phone service. So when I started hiking by myself, I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was in between jobs, and it was January in Ohio during pandemic year. So like no one was coming with me, and I couldn't go anywhere, and it was more of a I need to go alone because that's the only way I'm going to get out of this house. So I don't know that I would have pushed myself to go solo as early as I did without like those extenuating circumstances, but the more I've hiked solo, the more confident I get with it. And you always have moments where, something feels a little off, and I think you really have to trust your gut. But I actually love hiking solo. And obviously I have the dog with me as well, so that helps. But I really enjoy the serenity of hiking solo, and I think it just takes time to feel more confident in it.
How would you say your backpacking journey has progressed over time? Like started with short hikes and then what are you going at now? What are you trying to do? What are your plans?
Yeah, so I think that when I first started, I had no idea if I was going to like it or not. And so that first trip, as I mentioned, was a bit of a disaster. But then in 2023, in the spring of 2023, I met a couple of friends who took me on trips and sort of were willing to teach me things as we were doing it. And I think that really helped me gain confidence of, okay, here's how you successfully use a water filter. Here's how you successfully start a fire. Here's how you put up a tent so that it doesn't fall down in the middle of the night. And so having those awesome people who helped me do those things really made me feel a lot more confident, to the point that in 2024, in January, I hiked the Trans-Catalina Trail in California with two friends, but that was something that like I planned. I got the permits, I made the route, I booked everything, and they basically like came along with me for the ride. So it's exciting to go from I had literally no idea what I was doing in 2022 to being able to take a backpacking trip where you have to get on a plane and a ferry and make sure your permits are correct and you're sleeping on the beach and you have to plan your route correctly and you need to be careful about wildlife, sort of all in the space of basically a year and a half. So it was very cool.
What was the mileage like for that trip?
So the Trans-Catalina Trail is a 38-mile trail around Catalina Island in Southern California. It's part of Los Angeles County. And so we actually had pretty low mileage days compared to when I did the Laurel Highlands Trail here in Pennsylvania. I think our longest day was either 14 or 16 miles. So for a trail that is has a lot of towns or it's got two different towns and then it's got some stops along the way.
Hmm.
It's a pretty good like I don't want to use the word civilized, but it's got a lot if you run into trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, great trail. Highly recommend that one for anyone's backpacking bucket list. The permits are a little pricey compared to Pennsylvania. I will say they do upcharge you for that California beachfront tent lodging, but it was a great trip and I recommend it.
I know you and I both share a passion for planning, a real enjoyment
Yes.
of it. How do you plan backpacking trips?
I think that I generally start with an idea and then I put the idea into the universe of people that I know who backpack, sort of see who's interested in it, and then figure out the timing from who's interested. So when I did the Trans-Catalina Trail, I had a friend from when I used to live in California who was interested, and then I have a friend who is a coworker here in Pennsylvania who was interested. They didn't know each other until we literally got on the ferry to go to Catalina together. And so sort of getting the group together and then figuring out the timing, then figuring out most backpacking trails require some sort of permits. So figuring out when do you need to get the permits. Pennsylvania, it has been a little bit easier to get permits, I would say. For the Trans-Catalina Trail, I wanted to make sure that we definitely got the sites that we wanted because there are like sites that are better than other sites. And so I was I was awake at midnight Pacific time, which is 3 a.m. Eastern, to get permits like as soon as they dropped. Turns out I didn't need to do that, but I'm glad I did just in case. So then I feel like once you have the permits, I basically create a Google Doc of, okay, here's the dates we're going, here's the permit numbers, here's our campsites, here's everything that we need to bring. And so sharing that with everyone, and then also making sure that, once we do all the planning and we figure out what we're packing and who's bringing what, that everyone, then you have something to share with everyone's like significant others or emergency contacts. Because I think that's something that people worry about when backpacking and something I worry about, like if I just didn't come back, like would someone know where to go look for me? And so having a template of that information with, what's the direction, what are the campsites we're staying at, what is the mileage every day, where are we planning to stop, if we're planning to stop somewhere, is very helpful. And I actually have that template on my website now, if anyone is looking to plan a trip and wants that information.
And what's your website?
My website is www.mytrailsaремany.com.
What sort of tools or websites would you recommend people use to plan their trip?
I really like blogs. And so the reason that I like blogs is because you can tell you can tell what that person's experience was, and you can see, okay, like here's the mileage that they did, and a lot of the times people will post pictures of their campsite, exactly where they camped, any nuances for getting permits, anything that they ran into. And I think that sometimes the like governing body organization websites have good information, and sometimes they do not have good information, or they don't have all of the information that you need all in one place. And so I will start with that, but then I will usually try to use blogs as well to supplement. And so when I did my Laurel Highlands through hike, I used a blog, I think it's called Dane's Place, and he had, here's all the water sources, here's all the the parking GPS coordinates. And it was actually a great full circle moment because he emailed me a month ago and he said he used my itinerary for Oil Creek. So it was nice to have that interaction. So Dane, thank you for your Laurel Highlands website. It was very helpful.
I'm the exact same way when it comes to blogs. I think you can tell a lot about how their trip went and ways to improve it. Because if they go, oh, yeah, we had a problem finding the bathrooms, and you go, okay, well, then this isn't the best place to find bathrooms. You find it this way. Or one of the things I always do is so it's Pinterest, blogs. I love a YouTube vlog. And then if it's something like I'm going to a different country, it's always I'll go an entire country's route on Google Maps. Like,
Yeah.
I know that sounds nuts, but I've been to Iceland 4 times, and every single time I do it, I find completely new things. And I have to believe when you're trying to plan, where you're like, all right, I could meet, friends here at this town or something, it might be easy just to kind of go through and just see, all right, well, there's a parking lot there, there's this and that. I don't know if you've ever kind of done the same thing before with in terms of Google Maps like that.
I haven't used Google Maps like that, but that would be very interesting. I think, especially for places that are maybe a little more, like have a few more towns
Hmm.
and something like the West Highland Way in Scotland, that's probably great for that. One of the resources that I used for the TCT and would use if I did the Appalachian Trail, is it's a app called Far Out, and it can tell you where you are in relation to waypoints. So if there's a water source, All Trails is great in that it has some of those waypoints, but Far Out has the waypoint. And then when you click on that waypoint from where you are, it'll tell you, oh, 3.2 miles to that. So you're not doing the little scrolly thing on All Trails, trying to figure out, okay, I think it's this far, but I'm not sure. And I feel like for backpacking, that's especially helpful because if you need water and you need a water source, you want to know exactly how far that water source is. You don't want to
Yeah.
be off by a mile. You don't want to be off by half a mile. So Far Out has been a really good resource as well when I'm actually like on trail.
How do you like to pack for backpacking, and do you have any favorite gear?
Oh man, I have so much favorite gear. So for packing, this is something I would say that I need to improve on, and I am working on a packing list for myself so that I know every time I go on a trip, I need these things. And then if I'm going on a cold weather trip, I need these specific things. If I'm going on a warm weather trip, I need these other things. If I'm sleeping in a shelter, I don't need a tent. If I am not sleeping in a shelter, I do need to bring the tent. So that's something I'm working on because my last backpacking trip, I packed very chaotically and suffered because of it, I will say. Um, and then for favorite gear, this is a wide range. So for clothing, I would say my favorite item of clothing is I have shorts that are cool KUHL shorts that have zippered pockets. They're high-waisted, they're super comfortable. So when I clip on my backpack, they're not rubbing at all. I've had no issues with them. And the zippered pockets is super helpful so that I can have my phone handy, I can have snacks handy. So I love those in terms of clothing. In terms of big gear, like your big three, so your tent, your sleeping pad, your sleeping bag, or your backpack. I love my sleeping pad. I originally, the first, fateful backpacking trip, I borrowed a foam sleeping pad from a friend and had the worst night's sleep of my life. And then once I upgraded to, I have an Thermarest Neo X Lite sleeping pad. And that is totally worth it. It is definitely a purchase. I think it was about $178 when I got it, so it's probably more now. That was in 2023, but it has been worth every penny, and I sleep like a baby on that thing. I did a backpacking trip in March with a friend, and I'm not even kidding, slept for 13 hours straight. I woke up to him being like, "Are you dead?" And it was 8 a.m. in the morning, and I had slept the whole night through on this sleeping pad. So if that's not a recommendation, I don't know what is. And then in terms of, I guess, like hygiene gear, so I have a piece of gear. This is specific to women, but I have a piece of gear called a pee style, and it allows you to, it's basically like a style like for maple syrup, I guess, except that you pee into it and it allows you to pee standing up. So that is super helpful because you don't have to take off your backpack and you also like aren't exposed as much from squatting. And then it's especially helpful when you wake up at 3 in the morning and you have to go to the bathroom. And it's not as scary because you don't have to squat. So I really recommend that piece of equipment for all women backpackers. I think that is the piece of gear that was like truly life-changing for me. I know not everyone will feel that way, but it's $11 on Amazon. Just try it is my recommendation. So
Yeah, and backpacking gear ain't cheap, so $11 product that could be extremely useful. Spend the money.
yeah, I totally agree. And then I also, backpackers call it like a luxury item when you bring something that is not technically necessary for backpacking. And so my main luxury item is my Kindle, which I read every night before bed. And I know that on the Creator Outdoor Meetup, I had lost my Kindle in the parking lot and you found it. So you know that I take that thing everywhere and I would have been devastated if I lost it.
Yeah, I was like, man, I can't believe this is just in the parking lot.
Yeah,
Nice.
I was very upset about that. I didn't That was the one night this year that I did not, or in 2020, that was the one night in 2024 that I did not read before bed. So
What gear do you consider essential for a successful backpacking trip in Pennsylvania?
in Pennsylvania, mostly a rain jacket, I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
I think it has rained on every single backpacking trip I have been on in Pennsylvania, no matter what time of year. With one exception, our Laurel Highlands through hike in August and September of 23, it did not rain at all. So that is the one exception of the many nights that I've spent backpacking in Pennsylvania. I think it really does depend on the weather. So when I backpacked in March in at Raccoon Creek in 2024, that was very cold, very wet, needed all of the layers for sleeping, dry socks, packed a lot more than I would have for, a July trip, I would say. I also always wear a sun shirt. I know your listeners can't see me, but I am extremely pale and very sensitive to the sun, and so I will always wear a sun shirt kind of no matter what time of year it is. Even if it's winter, I will wear stuff over the sun shirt just in case it gets warm enough to take it off. But I generally don't backpack in a short sleeve shirt because I want to be protected from the sun.
And I think that's one way to kind of prepare for varying weather conditions while you're hiking and while you're backpacking is just have so many different layers available at least.
Yes. And I think that that's something that I, as I have tried to whittle down my pack and make it lighter, but also balance between what I need and what I feel comfortable with, I will generally bring more clothes than most of the ultralight backpackers will because I do carry kind of a heavy pack and my pack is usually around, depending on how long the trip is, my pack can be anywhere from 30 to 38 pounds, which is considered pretty heavy. But for me, I'm like, well, I can carry that. I'm physically able to carry that. And I would rather have something to be more comfortable than not. And I think as I was getting into backpacking and researching backpacking originally before I got started and before I had friends, show me what they did, I was very intimidated about people saying, "Oh, I went out for 10 days and I only brought one pair of shorts." And that works for them. That's great. That's probably not the choice that I personally would make. So
And I think that's important to note is that if you were to want to get into backpacking and all you watch were ultralight videos,
it's scary. It's
it's very scary.
intimidating. Yeah. And those people are awesome. Like they do things that are so amazing, but I think for me, like that's not me. I'm always going to want to carry my Kindle. I'm always going to want to have a pillow. I'm always going to want to have headphones. Like those are the things that I just I'm not gonna go without, at least at this point in my backpacking journey, and I don't want to sacrifice what I want just because the internet says that my pack should be lighter. So,
Yeah, just pack a full size toothbrush. You don't need to cut the whole bottom off, and then you have to just scrub it with your fingertips and look like a lunatic.
yes, exactly. And it's also, I mean, I'm using a backpack that is, I didn't have a backpacking backpack when I first started. And so I borrowed one, and then my friend was upgrading her backpack. So I have her dad's backpack from the 70s. And that's my main backpack. And it weighs 5 pounds. And everyone who backpacks will tell you that's insane. Why would you carry that much weight? But, it's got all these little pockets and it fits everything I need. And I'm not just digging through a giant, one basically what feels like a garbage bag of stuff to find what I need at a certain time. And so that really works for me. I think if I was doing anything longer than what I have done, which is 5 days is my max so far, I would look into upgrading. But like you use what you have, and that is better than not going out at all because you think you have to spend $600 on a backpack. So
Absolutely. You can fall down that trap, especially if you're fortunate enough to where you're making some good money and you're like, well, $200 for this, $400 for this, then I'm going to be a backpacker. It's like the gear doesn't make you a backpacker. The experience makes you a backpacker or a hiker or however you want to look at it. And I always find it interesting because you look at the people that did these amazing explorations of, Everest and K2, and they weren't wearing light gear. They didn't have all this like ultra light, well, my pack is 2 pounds fully packed and I sleep in a hammock and I'm miserable. They were packing lots of gear and they were able to do it. So it's like, I would hate to say for somebody to get into backpacking that you have to spend a ton of money on gear. That's just not the truth.
exactly. And I think that for me, had I had that first backpacking trip and I had spent $1,000 on the stuff for that trip, I would have been so much more miserable because I didn't have a good experience. Like it wasn't a great time, and I would have spent all that money, so I would have felt that it was wasted. And so that's why I always recommend when people want to get into backpacking, borrow gear, rent gear, try to find it on buy nothing or at a garage sale or on consignment. Like there are so many ways to try to there's so many ways to not spend full price on all of the gear. And so I'm super thankful for all of my, backpacking friends that came before me who were willing to lend me a tent when I was going on a trip, or lend me a sleeping pad that I eventually ended up buying because I loved it, or, ship me their dad's backpack from Philadelphia. Thanks, Mari. Like it's one of those things where and so now like having the gear that I have and that I like, as I upgrade, I want to sort of pay that back,
Yeah.
like pay it forward for someone who maybe hasn't gotten into backpacking, doesn't have that stuff, and hey, I'm upgrading my backpack. Like, do you want it? I know you're looking to get into it. So I think it's a really cool culture in that way. Um, but I definitely do not recommend people spend a lot of money right out the gate, especially if you don't know if you like it. So,
Now let's move on to something that's very close to my heart. What's your favorite hiking snacks?
oh man, okay. I eat like a 5-year-old who was given $30 and is really hungry on trail. So I love gummy bears. Those are one of my favorites. I love gummy bears. I love peanut M&Ms. I really like chips. So like a Ruffles chip, which they don't pack very well. So that's usually like a first night treat. I like Snickers bars. I also will do some of the more traditional like Honey Stinger, Cliff Bar, um, energy chews, that sort of thing. But I mean, like nothing beats a gummy bear when you're like trying to climb a hill with a 30-pound pack. It's truly the best.
Do you prefer a gummy bear over a gummy worm?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And do you prefer a gummy bear over a gummy shark?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
That's divisive. I don't like that. The worms, the
Do we
worms.
need to have a poll about this? Because I think the gummy bear is the superior gummy candy for sure.
They're too consumable. At least you can take multiple bites out of a worm, and then it's fun when they're separate colors, and you're like, ooh, what's a red and an orange? Oh, wait, they're all the same flavor. It doesn't matter, but they're fun to chew. Do you have a favorite brand of gummy bear?
I like the traditional Haribo, but I mean I'll eat all of the gummy bears. But I usually buy the giant family size
I mean, sure.
pack for yeah, for a backpacking trip. I will say they are like for backpacking food, you usually look for like a good calorie to weight ratio. Gummy bears are the opposite of a good calorie to weight ratio, but again, like I'm willing to carry it because I know that when I'm really suffering on mile 15 of 20 for the day, it's going to give me that little boost. So I will carry it for myself.
As I'm now just kind of getting into longer hikes and the idea of like overnight hikes, I'll tell you, a Lunchable is also a phenomenal pack. That's also a first night thing. It's ridiculous to carry. An ultralight person's whole pack might weigh as much as a ham and cheese Lunchable.
Yeah, that's valid. Though I will say one of the guys I hiked the Laurel Highlands Trail with, there's certain cheeses that last longer without being refrigerated, and I think he carried a block of cheddar cheese for 3 days on the Laurel Highlands Trail in August. So I would say you need to do your research because I think it's hard cheeses are better and soft cheeses will go bad, but I wasn't gonna risk it, but he was totally fine and he got to have cheese every day. So I'm more of a peanut butter and jelly
Ooh, yeah.
tortilla person, I will say. I think that that's like my main one. And then on the Laurel Highlands Trail, I was really glad I had plain tortillas because we had a really long hot day and my body was just like, we're not accepting any food right now. We're not like I felt really nauseous. And so I was sitting at the top of the hill at Seven Springs during our lunch break after we've, hiked 16 miles and it's 85 degrees, just eating a plain tortilla, looking miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've certainly treated myself to an uncrustable at the top of a mountain before, just to be like, there you go, buddy, you got a little treat.
I've heard good things about the Uncrustables. I'll have to try that one.
What are some of your favorite shorter hikes in Pennsylvania?
Shorter hikes. Okay. Western Pennsylvania, I love Ferncliff in Ohio, the Ferncliff Peninsula. So that's like I think it's like 2.1 or 2.2 miles. And it's, you get to go out on the rocks near Ohiopyle Falls. There's some evergreen trees back there. If it's the fall, the colors are beautiful. That is definitely one of my favorites. I also really like the Sunken Garden Trail at Moraine State Park. So that again also has evergreens, really pretty, some views of the lake. I think that's about three and a half. And then closer to me in Pittsburgh, people don't agree with me on this, but I love this area. It was formerly a golf course and it was purchased by the Allegheny Land Trust. It's called Churchill Valley Greenway. And so you can see where, it used to be a golf course and now it's sort of being taken over by the land, which is very cool. They've done a ton of work on it. So I probably go there once every 3 months. And so to see the work that they've done on it and the improvements, I think that's one of my favorite places to visit more locally. Yeah.
That sounds great. I got to check that one out. I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah, I think it's a very local spot, I would say. So hopefully people don't get mad at me for saying it. And some people don't like it because it is, it's not the most maintained. It's a lot of volunteer maintenance and some of the bridges maybe aren't that safe and so you do kind of have to be careful when you go because it's it's still a work in progress, but it's so cool to see the transformation from this was an overgrown golf course to this is now being usable green space for the community, which is really cool. And I would encourage people, even if you're not around Pittsburgh, to like look for those types of places when you're hiking in the area and not just stick to, the tried and true favorites, which I know everyone loves Ohio Pile and loves Marine and loves Raccoon, and I love all of those places too, but the more the more hidden gems, I would say, are great, especially because there are groups like the Allegheny Land Trust and I'm sure others in your area that are putting so much work into making these places great.
And now, let's hear from our sponsors. Are you ready to conquer Pennsylvania's wildest footpath? Join the Keystone Trails Association for an unforgettable weekend on the Midstate Trail. Registration is now open for the Midstate Trail Everett Region Slack Pack from May 2nd to the 4th, 2025. Sections 1, 3, and 4 of the Midstate Trail will be covered and guided by Tony Barr, Trail Manager for the Everett region of the Midstate Trail. Register at kta-hike.org/events. Are you looking for your next adventure? Unlock some of the best landscapes in Pennsylvania with incredibly detailed, highly curated, waterproof trail maps from the folks at Purple Lizard. They create extraordinary maps of Pennsylvania state forests for people who love to explore the outdoors. Find them at your local outfitters, bike shops, and bookstores, or visit purplelizard.com, where your next adventure begins. Refresh your love of Pennsylvania state parks and forests this spring with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation. Stay in the know by finding events on Meetup or their website, signing up for their weekly e-newsletter, following them on social media, joining a local friends group, or accessing resources online at paparksandforests.org. Together, we can help conserve Pennsylvania's natural resources, support education, and remove barriers to an inclusive outdoor experience for everyone. Looking for a way to add some local Pennsylvania flair to your space? Check out Sister Sunflowers. They create unique stickers inspired by small local spaces that make your community shine. From quirky caves to hidden local gems, their stickers bring your favorite places to life. Perfect for your laptop, water bottle, or anywhere that needs a little hometown love. For both locals and visitors, there's stickers, magnets, prints, and more celebrating Pennsylvania's most iconic parks and forests. And for the more avid explorers, there's even a hand-drawn poster to keep track of the Pennsylvania state parks and forests that you've been to. Use the code HELLBENDER15 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Support local, inspire adventure, and decorate with meaning. Only at Sister Sunflowers. Shop now and celebrate the places that make your town special. All right, back to the show. What are a few of your favorite longer hikes in Pennsylvania?
I loved the Laurel Highlands Trail. And so that is a 70-mile trail that goes from Johnstown to Ohio Pile. I've probably spent like 15 nights sleeping on that trail.
Oh, wow.
And just in different pockets of like a 1 night here, a 2 night here. I did the whole thing in August and September of 2023. We did it like Memorial Day weekend plus a day. And it's just, I don't know, there's something about it that is fun, and to go back to the same trail, especially in different seasons. That was where my first backpacking trip was. It was where my most recent backpacking trip was. It was my first through hike of a full trail. So it holds a lot of special memories for me. And I also love Ohio Pile. And so to be able to, like during that through hike, to be able to come off trail and go and eat at the Falls Market there right afterwards and be disgusting and not showered and be surrounded by all these tourists who are, enjoying Ohio Pile Falls. Like it was a really cool experience for me.
I actually used your blog post on that to do the first couple miles of the Laurel Highlands Trail when I did a weekend over at Ohio Pile. I was just like,
awesome.
Oh yeah, I want to find good information. I know somebody who likes this place. And
Yeah.
that was really helpful because I think that was it was the first real overlook when you start the trail in Ohio
Yep.
Pile and you get to that really beautiful. And I mean, I was the next weekend after that, I was doing a full weekend trip of hiking in World's End. So I was like, all right, put a couple miles on, brand new backpack. Let's see how to do this thing. And I mean, at first you're just going straight up. And then
Yes.
you got your dips and you got your elevation changes. And then I get to the overlook. I'm like, man, good. You have a nice little victory. You get to see a view. And then right behind me, a guy comes up and he was racing a kid.
Oh, wow.
Who was like 10 years old. And I looked down and he was wearing running sandals. And he goes, oh, that was great. That was like 20 minutes. And I was like,
Oh, man.
I was like, I'm so sorry. Real quick, 20 minutes from where? And he goes like, oh, from like the start. So it took me like an hour and a half or whatever. It took this guy 20 minutes, and I was like, man, and this 10-year-old child. Nothing to
Yeah.
humble you like outdoorsy kids who grow up outdoorsy.
Oh yeah, when someone wears Crocs and is just smoking you, that I totally I understand that. I am not the fastest hiker, I would say. So, and I will recommend for people that are want to do the full thing, start in Johnstown and end in Ohio Pile so that you're going down that part. And also I think that the Ohio Pile part of it is, in my opinion, the like the prettiest part of it. So you'd sort of end with the best, and then also you just step off trail and you can walk to somewhere to eat real food, which was the highest priority in my opinion. So yeah.
And really good food. I can't remember the name of the place, but I had a mushroom risotto that was I was stunned. I was like, and everybody was kind of gross. They just got off the river. They just got off of hiking. I was
Yep.
like, this is my place.
Yes. Yeah, it's I love it there. It's such a great place to visit in every single season. I love it in winter, I love it in fall, I love it in spring. So, yeah, that's probably my like close to the heart favorite long trail in Pennsylvania. I do also really like Raccoon Creek has about a 20-mile loop around the park. I do also like hiking there, and you can backpack and they have shelters there as well. I generally have done that as a day hike. I've backpacked one night there, but would like to do more because that's also a great park that has a lot to offer.
Can you recommend any lesser known trails or maybe like hidden gems for backpacking in Pennsylvania?
I really like Quebec Run, and that is also in the Laurel Highlands. It's about an 11-mile loop, but what's cool about it is you can do a whole bunch of, because there's a lot of intersecting trails, you can kind of do as much or as little as you want. So that's one I really like for like me being from Pittsburgh. It's about an hour, 70 minutes from me. And so I can leave work on a Friday, assuming it's not winter or spring and we have a decent amount of daylight. I can leave work on a Friday. I can drive down. I can hike 1 to 2 miles to a campsite, and then I can do the rest on a Saturday, and then I'm home by Saturday afternoon. So it's a really great, like, I'm trying to fit in a backpacking trip, but also I have a life and like to sleep in my own bed. So that's a place I really like. And the campsites are, so it's primitive camping. So there's no shelters or anything, no bathroom. You need to follow all the primitive camping rules and follow all the fire restrictions, all of that. But I really like backpacking there.
Yeah, I think you provide an important perspective because kind of like when you start comparing yourself when you want to get into backpacking or you want to get into hiking and you look in they have better gear, they have newer gear. You're not somebody who has all the time in the world to hike as much as they want. You have a full-time job, you do a ton of
Yep.
content creation. This is something that's a hobby for yours that you get to spend time out in the woods. It's not your full-time gig. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's important to kind of show that balance of like, oh yeah, I do this on the weekends. I'm not out here, 365. I'm not like Darwin just hiking all the time.
Yes. And granted, I if my boss is listening to this, I would love to have an extra, 20 days of PTO for the year and be able to do something longer like the JMT, the long trail. But, I have 20 days of PTO. I split it between, we got weddings, we're going on vacation together, we're doing a long weekend here, a long weekend there. And so by the time you do that, you don't have a ton of time left. And so I do a lot of my trails as either 1 to 2 nights on a weekend, don't take any time off, or I'll do a 3 or 4 day weekend where I'm only taking 1 or 2 days of PTO. So when I did the Trans Catalina Trail, we did it in January on Martin Luther King weekend. So I took a Friday off and a Tuesday off, and then I worked remote from California Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that, that was how I was doing that trail. And then Laurel Highlands Trail, same thing, like Labor Day weekend. I took a Thursday and a Friday off, and we ended up finishing in 4 days, which I think my hiking partners are still mad at me for, but but we did 4 instead of our planned 5, and that was Labor Day weekend. So planning around those long weekends is sometimes harder to get permits. I will say that, but it helps you fit it around your life.
If you had to suggest one hike to convince someone hiking was great, what do you think it would be?
Oh, that's hard and also a really great question. If it was, oh man, okay. If it was backpacking specific and it was not Pennsylvania, I would say the Trans-Catalina Trail because you every step of that trail is beautiful. Like you are surrounded by the ocean, you are sleeping on the beach every night. It's Pacific paradise. And so that was very awesome. Obviously, I love Pennsylvania. I moved back here from California for a reason. So if I was picking a Pennsylvania trail, I would I would probably pick like any of the trails in Ohio Pile. Ferncliff is a huge favorite. I think Cucumber Falls, it is short, but that's beautiful. Jonathan Run is great. The part of the Laurel Highlands Trail you mentioned that goes up to the Overlook, maybe not a good trail to convince people to like hiking because it does have a lot of elevation gain, but the payoff is worth it. So I think all of those trails, if we're not talking about backpacking specific, those ones are my favorite short ones.
Yeah, Ohio Pile kind of has a little bit of everything that if you want to go short, you want to go long, you want to see waterfalls,
Yep.
you want to see vistas, they kind of got it pegged.
Yes. Yeah. I know we're not supposed to have favorite parks, but this it definitely makes my top 124. So
Well, other than Ohio Pile, do you have any state park recommendations for people who want to get into hiking?
for wanting to get into hiking, specific to Western Pennsylvania, I would say McConnell's Mill is a good one. So there's Hell's Hollow, which is I think under 2 miles out and back. There's a couple of other shorter waterfall ones there. So there's Alpha Falls, and then I think one other one in McConnell's Mill. Moraine, I feel like is also people overlook it because they just think of it for boating, but I Moraine is also great for hiking. I like Sunken Garden. I like the part of the North Country Trail that goes through there. And then Raccoon is also great. And then if we're not talking specific to Western Pennsylvania, I really enjoyed Black Moshannon out in Happy Valley. That is great. The Bog Trail is super short, but boardwalks, the views are awesome. Um, there's a lot of state parks out in that area that are great for visiting. Yeah.
One of the ones that's close by me that I love because it just offers a nice variety is Pine Grove Furnace and Michaud State Forest because it's right across. They border each other. You can do Pole Steeple if you want a nice view. Chimney Rocks. There's if you want to hike a paved portion of the Appalachian Trail. Let's say you have accessibility issues and you just want to go for a mile and say you hiked on the Appalachian Trail, you could do it there. If you just want to go eat a bunch of ice cream, you could do it at the you could do it at the
Love that.
general store there. You could go to the Appalachian Trail Museum. I think that's one of those that when I moved here and I started going outdoors and I started kind of exploring my space around me, I was like, "Oh, I'm lucky. Like this is a really enjoyable space." I know you've been able to spend a little bit of time there.
Yeah, and it was great. I really enjoyed my time at Pine Grove. I definitely want to get back. And then another one I really like in Eastern Pennsylvania, and I haven't been to Ricketts Glen yet, so I know I'm sure everyone will be like, "You have to go to Ricketts Glen." Yes, I know it's on the list, guys. Um, I really like French Creek State Park
Mm-hmm.
with the lakes. There's one, I think it's a 2 mile loop that's maybe called Hopewell or Horseshoe or something that is a really good one as well. So just I feel like we're so lucky in Pennsylvania, especially coming from California where everywhere I wanted to go hike, I had to pay $10 to $20. And so here in Pennsylvania to not have to do that is amazing. And I want everyone to know how lucky we are here that we have all of this and we have four seasons and we have the ability to have these amazing parks without having to spend money. So
Can you share a memorable experience you've had while backpacking in Pennsylvania?
yes. So I'll share two, and I will say that I don't want this to deter anyone from backpacking,
Is it a bear
but
run in? Did you see a bear?
so actually I have seen a bear, but not while backpacking. I saw a bear in McAfee Knob when I was down in Roanoke, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
And we ran into we side note, we did this as a sunrise hike. We did not see the bear in the dark, thank goodness, because I think I would have been very scared. We saw the bear at about 8 a.m. in the morning when we're hiking back down from seeing the sunrise. And then we ran into a trail steward and we were like, "Oh, hey, we saw this bear." And she goes, "Oh yeah, that bear's been bothering hikers for food. Um, we're not surprised you saw him." And we were like, "Okay, we're gonna keep walking."
Yeah,
So
bothering, quote unquote.
yes, yes. So there had been pictures of him. If you look on all trails on the McAfee Knob trail, there had been pictures of him like going through people's backpacks if they left the food down. So I did my research before we went. I made sure that we had the bear spray, and I also was like, guys, no one's putting their backpacks down, even though it's a day hike. We're here for 10 minutes at the top, eating our snack and then leaving. So, but memorable experiences when backpacking. I My third backpacking trip ever was in Quebec Run, which I love. And so I went with a friend who I knew but didn't know super well, and she's great. We're really good friends now, but at the time, I was telling other people, "Oh, I'm going on this trip with this girl," and they were like, "How well do you know this person?" I was like, "Well, not that well, but I think it'll be fine. She seems cool." So we go on this trip. We do what I was talking about, where we did the 2 miles down to the campsite on a Friday night because we both had to be back in Pittsburgh on Saturday. So we are setting up our tent and we're making dinner and it's getting dark. And we were like, okay, this is great. We found this awesome campsite right by the river. And we're sort of looking around the campsite at a point that I will say it was definitely too late to move camp. And we realized that there's a skull hanging from a tree in basically kind of on the side of the campsite. And so I had seen that there was like something white on the tree, but I just thought, I don't know, I thought it was a tree growth or something. And so when you see that and you know that you're going to be spending the night in this area, you're kind of like, oh no, like what have we done? And so we both saw it, and then we were both like, we're just not going to talk about this. So we go to bed. Um, we shared a tent, which was great because I think both of us would have been a little freaked out separate. And so I wake up probably 3 or 4 in the morning to her climbing over me to get out of the tent to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So I'm like, okay, I'll get up as well. We're both up. Let's just do this. So, go our separate ways. And then we're finding our way back to the tent and we see all of these like shiny dots with our headlamp on the leaves near the campsite. And so at the time at 4 in the morning, when you're not thinking correctly and you're in the dark, like we were kind of scared by that. I think what it is on purpose. I think it's like reflective paint to direct the people back to their campsites. But at the time, we were like, okay, we're in a campsite with a skull. It's 4 in the morning. We're seeing this like creepy reflective something that if I'm in a horror movie, that looks like a monster blood. So we're both kind of freaked out. We get back in the tent and then we close the tent. We're both trying to go back to sleep. And then we hear growling. And we were like, we're gonna die, basically. And so we're like, okay, we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen. And we hear some more growling, and then whatever it was goes away. And so we, the next day, we don't talk about it at all. We finish our 9 miles. We get in the car, we drive to Sheetz, and we park in the Sheetz parking lot. And I was like, can you believe what happened last night? And we were both just like, we're not going to talk about this while we're still in the woods. So we ended up looking up animal noises. We think it was some sort of bobcat or something. So nothing that like really would have hurt us, but at the time with the skull and the shiny stuff on the leaves and then all the growling, like we both separately had the thought of we are going to get murdered by a cult while we are out here. And so I would say if you're scoping out a campsite for where you want to stay, I will now be looking for skulls hanging from trees from every place that I plan on camping. But I think that was probably the scariest thing that will hopefully have ever happened to me while backpacking with a somewhat stranger. So yeah, that was an experience.
Tori, not the advice I was expecting, but the advice I really need. So I'm glad. I
Yeah.
will look for skulls.
Yeah. And then one other, my most recent backpacking trip is I took my friend Hannah for her first backpacking trip. She'd never been before. So it's myself, Hannah, and another friend, Heather. And I did not plan correctly. I mistimed our window for when we needed to leave Pittsburgh to make sure we made it to camp by the time the sun set, and I mistimed it by a lot. Like I don't know what was going on, but I mistimed it by almost 90 minutes. So we're hiking in the dark for like 90 minutes, and I feel bad because it's Hannah's first backpacking trip and that's not what you want to deal with. Like not only are you hiking in the dark, which isn't fun, but then you get to camp and it's like 9 o'clock at night and you're eating dinner, you're making camp. And so we're probably 30 minutes from the campsite. Everyone's pretty sick of hiking in the dark, and we hear some crazy animal noises that, again, like you pretend that nothing's happening and everything's fine. But then when we got home, we looked it up and we think it's fishers,
Oh, yeah.
like the Pennsylvania fisher, because it was it was a pretty scary noise, I'll be honest. Now at this point in time, being safe in my house, it was cool that it happened. But those screeches are pretty terrifying. So I will say all of my other backpacking trips have gone great and I have really enjoyed them. I think that backpacking friendships, like you become someone better friends with someone backpacking much quicker than just normally because you have to plan together. You have to spend well, you don't have to, but like you mostly spend every minute together. You're dividing up camp chores together. You're dividing up packing together. You're, strategizing. You're talking the entire time you're hiking. And so people that I've gone on backpacking trips with, I'm a lot closer with than people I just go on day hikes with. And I think that is what is great about it because you can almost like accelerate a friendship from I kind of know this person because I met them at the gym, like my friend Claire from Quebec Run, to we are now very good friends and hang out all the time. So,
Yeah, I've had the dumbest and funnest and most intelligent conversations ever when I'm hiking.
yes. Yes, I think that's the best way to sum it up because I will say by day 3 of 4 of our Laurel Highlands trip, I feel like we all knew like there were 3 of us. We knew everything about each other. We were just talking to talk at a certain point. You're singing, you're saying random words, so but it's great. It's a great way to spend time with friends.
There's a couple go-tos that now that I travel with other people, whether it's like places my wife doesn't want to go, so I bring some friends and things like that. The questions I always like are, what's your top 5 favorite fruits? Because that's a great argument to get into. That's a fun argument because somebody will say something crazy like fresh cherries, and you're like, "That's ridiculous. That you shouldn't count that." Or
Cherries are so good. Do
they're
we
not
need
a
to
top.
fight about this?
They're not a top 5 fruit. It's probably
Wow.
pineapple banana is 1 2. I don't think there's a one is a pineapple for sure. But then there's other people that'll just be like, oh, I really like a grapefruit, and you're like,
Oh,
what?
that's
Or
incorrect.
I talk about this all the time. Somebody I have this conversation at least, I don't know, maybe 3 times a week, and I love it. I love having this conversation. Somebody will say like melon, And
Oh no.
I'm like, what kind? And they're like, honeydew. I'm like, get out. You don't even get to participate in this conversation. If somebody
Yeah.
comes out with like a plum or a pear, I'm like, all right, this is a serious performer. This is somebody that needs to be talked to. But then every once in a while, they'll just come out with a ridiculous answer. I'm like even like a kiwi. It's like, come on, that fine. Top five, definitely not that. That's a great one to have. So you can take that if you want to get into a fun argument on our trail. And another
Yep.
one is, what are three companies you would love to sponsor your life?
Oh, that's good too.
And you could set parameters where it's like, you don't get any money from them, but you get free gear, or maybe you get free travel. And that's a fun one. That's hours right there. That's 2 hours of just talking about, is it, is it Red Bull? Is it, an REI? Is it some local company like Dutchware for like hammocks? The Icelandic Bureau of Tourism, which is mine.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, that would be great. At top of my head, I would say Southwest Airlines, Sheets, and probably some sort of outdoor company like a backcountry or an REI. Yeah.
I'm a little disappointed I didn't say Sheets right now. It is in my group, so I want to make sure that no Sheets reach out to me. I love you. You're my favorite.
Yes. And I will say you asked about food earlier. My favorite thing to pack out for a first night of backpacking trip is a Sheets made to order sandwich.
Oh
And
yeah,
so I'll get pepper jack cheese, turkey, boom boom sauce, lettuce, jalapeno, and banana peppers. And that is my favorite thing to have first night on trail.
that's a top tier order. That's a
Thank
great
you.
order.
Thank
Yes.
you. I
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah, I can go Sheets orders all day. You get a Big Moz, which is a burger with mozzarella sticks on top. That's a phenomenal. Even a burrito pack's good. Those things are like 12 pounds. I love those.
That that sounds great. And then you got to reward yourself with the sheets after the backpacking trip as
Of
well.
course.
So then you get your app sampler and then I love a little iced coffee. So that's that's it. I would say that almost every backpacking trip, and this is something I want to actually add to my hiking tracker for next year, is how many times I stop at a Sheets related to a hike in the year. So,
Yeah, that's double digits right there.
oh, for sure.
Yeah, a mac and cheese bites will be the perfect end to almost any trip, good or bad, really.
Yes. And I will say I lived in Philadelphia for 6 years and I've lived in Pittsburgh for 3 years. And people say that Wawa is better, but I have been converted and so can you. So,
I grew up in New Jersey, where literally I've spent so many hours in Wawa parking lots, 100 days and days in Wawa parking lots. Sheets is better.
yes.
It's just the way it is. I'm sorry, that's the way that's got to be. Sheets is better.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we agree on this. We can fight about the cherries later.
Yeah, yeah, and we're not even going to talk about Royal Farms or any of that business. We're serious people talking about serious things. Rudders,
Yes,
get out of here.
exactly.
I know leave no trace is really important to you. How do you practice leave no trace principles while backpacking in Pennsylvania's natural areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a dog, which I mentioned. And what's great about dogs is that you get poop bags for them. And so the poop bags come in like these little rolls of 10. And so a lot of the times I'll just throw a roll of poop bags, even if the dog isn't with me, I'll throw a roll of poop bags in my backpacking backpack or my day hike pack. And then that way I just like have a garbage bag with me at all times because I also hate when I see garbage on trail and if it's not something disgusting like toilet paper, I'll usually pick it up. Um, but one thing that I feel like people forget to pack a lot when backpacking is garbage bags, and you do kind of need a lot of them sometimes, so that the dog bag roll is really helpful. What's nice about like Raccoon Creek, backpacking at maybe not Moraine, but backpacking on the Laurel Highlands Trail is they have each of the campsites has garbage. So you don't have to carry your garbage the
Nice.
entire time. Something like a Quebec run where it is primitive, like you do have to pack out everything. So when thinking about food and stuff, I'll usually try to bring one of those backpacking meals that you can rehydrate. And so that actually doubles as a great garbage bag as well for because you can reseal it a lot of the time. And I don't, I would say that like you need to make sure you know how to go to the bathroom outside. That's very important. And so making sure that you're following all the rules of if you're able to dig a hole, like that you're far enough away from water and that you're digging, I think it's like 6 inches or 8 inches deep. But just checking all the regulations of what you can do, packing out any toilet paper. I think that that's one thing that I see not as much in Pennsylvania. I will say I feel like I saw it a lot more. I've seen it a lot more hiking in other countries is seeing like the body wipes and toilet paper. And that is just like there's nothing that takes you out of the zen of a hike of seeing rather than seeing someone's like poopy toilet paper. Just please pack it out, everyone. Like bring a garbage bag, do what you got to do, but don't make the rest of us suffer through it.
And you can listen to our Leave No Trace episode with Ben Lawhorn. It's really great to learn about, what you should be doing, how to maybe help people that don't want to do the same amount of work as you're doing to kind of tell them about the benefits of kind of helping and doing things like that. What would you say is your number one trail pet peeve?
Trail pet, I think garbage is kind of the main one that because that is just like there's not a single person alive that thinks that throwing garbage on the ground is okay. It's like people do it knowing that it's a bad thing to do. Like there's no way that people just don't know that that's a bad thing to do. We've been taught not to litter forever. And so I think that that's probably my number one pet peeve. And then I think people see me as a dog owner and are like, oh, well, like she loves dogs, and I do love dogs. I will say that I do not like when dogs are off leash when they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
I have no problem if the dog has recall, but there's so many, I've had so many instances on trails where, I mean, the Allegheny County Park System, you have to have your dog on a leash at all times. And the amount of times I've just run into people with off leash dogs that are like, oh, he's friendly. It's like, well, my dog's not. And I don't want your dog getting near my dog. I don't want your dog getting near me. And I think that that's something that I would ask the dog owners who are listening to be responsible for that around that. I grew up with a dad who like my dad does not like dogs at all, and he's gotten bit before. Like he's very afraid of dogs, and so I think as a dog owner, I treat every person that my dog interacts with like they're my dad and they have that level of comfort with dogs. And I think that that's what you should be doing. So,
Can I tell you something that started to really, really bother me? Maybe like a listen and don't judge sort of thing. I
okay.
I despise when people are having meals at the top of lookouts or like great views, and then they go, "Oh, this is just mine now for 45 minutes." Oh,
Yes.
do you want a picture? Too bad you can't do it.
I will say that that is definitely frustrating. And I think because of the stigma around content creation, I think that I am like so hypersensitive to how much time, I'm taking at a certain viewpoint and so if I'm taking pictures, even if it's like I'm with the tourism board, I'm getting paid to take pictures. If someone else comes up and they want pictures, I'll be like, "Oh, you go ahead. I'll just wait until you're done." Or, "Oh, do you want me to take a picture of you?" That sort of thing. I would I would agree with you there. I think there's ways to have the space be for everyone without, you know, taking up the entire space. So,
It's so funny. My hands are sweating. I'm getting so annoyed by thinking about people who do that. It shouldn't. It's one of those things that I think was taught to me. Like the guy who started getting me outdoors, we did a big Adirondacks trip that we had such a great time with, and he was just like, "Can you believe these people taking up?" And I was like, "What? What are they're just having lunch. What does it matter?" And by the time I left that trip, I was just like, "How dare you try to own this vista with your stupid lunch that you decided? Just sit in the back and then look at it from there."
yeah. Yeah, and I think there are I mean, because I'm thinking of like places where I have encountered that, and the place I encountered it most recently was on the Laurel Highlands Trail on the like going from the cross country ski center to Grindle Ridge. There's a lookout, I think at mile 22 maybe.
Hmm.
And there are places where you can kind of, pull off to the side and still have the view and eat your lunch, but we had our group had been like, oh, we'll have a snack at this viewpoint. And it was just an entire family was there. And we were like, okay, I guess we'll sit on the ground over here and not enjoy the view at all. So,
Yeah, I'm glad your 4-year-old who's never going to remember this got this moment, and we couldn't as adults. Kids get too many free good things anyway. Anyway, I'm sorry. Are there any hikes you're preparing for now, or any backpacking trips that you're trying to get ready for in 2025?
so I have a friend who is doing the Pacific Crest Trail starting in April, and so she lives in DC, and we're trying to figure out if we can, get out for a shakeout for her together. So we've talked about the Laurel Highlands Trail, which, obviously I would do again. At least parts of it, depending on timing, or there's 40 miles of the Appalachian Trail in Maryland. So that's something that's been on my list for a while of trying to, knock off an entire state
Mm-hmm.
on the Appalachian Trail because I've only done day hikes on the AT, and I would really love to do a lot of the miles in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
But if we, have a weekend and Maryland's kind of in between both of us, might be able to, knock out 40 miles in a 3-day weekend. So that's kind of TBD, but I as I was thinking about this episode, I was like, I should plan a backpacking trip.
And the Pacific Coast Trail, that's a big hike.
Yeah, so that goes from Mexico to Canada through California, Oregon, and Washington. And I, seeing her prepare for it is really exciting, and I'm excited to follow along on her journey. And so it would be great to be able to get out with her and do a shakeout with her and, learn from what she's doing on a big hike like that.
Do you have any dream hikes that you'd like to do one day?
I would really like to do, so there's a lot in Europe that I would like to do, and that's obviously a little bit different because something like the Cotswolds Way, which is something my husband and I have talked about doing in the future, you're not backpacking in the sense of American backpacking where you have the tent and the sleeping bag and the sleeping pad. You're kind of going from like bed and breakfast to bed and breakfast and with towns in between. And so I think that would be really great because after our backpacking trip together, he was like, I never want to do that again. I'm done with sleeping on the ground. And, I respect that decision. And so this is kind of a nice in between. And we did in September 2024, we did a hut to hut for our 5th-year wedding anniversary in Austria. And that was great. And so that was like you pack the day pack, you have some clothes, you pack your snacks, and then you're going from basically a town to a remote mountain hut for lunch. And then you keep hiking, and then you end up in a remote mountain hut for sleeping. And then you keep hiking and sort of repeat that. We did ours over 3 days. And I would love to do more of that in the Dolomites. They have those there. I would love to do the West Highland Way in Scotland, the Camino in Spain. So I have a lot on
Just a
my list
couple.
yeah, I have a lot on my list that I would like to do. So hopefully I get to retire at 40 and can hit off all of those on my bucket list.
Well, where can people follow your adventures on social media?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Tory Talks Trails. That's Tory. And then my website is www.mytrailsaremany.com. And I would say if you are interested in backpacking and you're looking for backpacking specific resources, the website is the best place to start. So I have trail specific guides like Oil Creek, Raccoon Creek, Laurel Highlands Trail, and then the Trans Catalina Trail. And then I also have more sort of generic, here's all the gear that I have, here's the clothing that I wear, here's what I have for safety equipment, here's backpacking essentials for women. I have my trip planning template, here's how you plan a backpacking trip. And so I think that that's that's probably the best place to start. But if you enjoy videos of mostly me making fun of myself in the woods, you should also follow me on Instagram.
Tory, thanks so much for talking to us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Christian.
I want to thank my guest, Tory Mather, for joining the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Meta for more information about upcoming episodes. You can support the podcast by buying merch at hemlockstohellbenders.com, or you can click support this show in the podcast description to provide a monthly donation. This has been Hemlocks to Hellbenders. I'll see you out there. Hosting, production, and editing by Christian Alexanderson. Music by John Sauer. Graphics by Matt Davis.